First thing we gotta do, guys, is take off the wheels. Ford has recently been using these lug nuts, which have an extra alloy on top. And anytime you take them off, you basically wreck them. So if you can find something that is a solid metal lug nut, I would change to that. First thing we have to do is take off the wheel. Once we got the wheels off, next up we're gonna take off ABS sensor wiring, push it out of the way. ABS sensor.
They use two retainers. One is 8mm, the other one is 10mm. We want to make sure it's nice and loose, so when we move the whole axle around, we don't put too much tension on those wires and the hoses.
The more things you can get out of the way, the easier the whole job is going to be.
Next up, we want to get some penetrating fluid and spray the areas we're going to be taking off. The upper ball joint, then we're going to go underneath, spray 2 bolts holding the strut basically into the control arm, spray the stabilizer bar and stabilizer link that we're going to be taking off. Now we're starting to take off the upper control arm ball joint. The nut is 18mm. Holding pin is going to be 8mm in case your ball joint moves around and you can't really get it moving. Next up, stabilizer bar link. The top is again 18. We're trying to get it moving. The 8 goes on top of it in case it's too stuck and doesn't really move. You gotta let the penetrating fluid sit a little bit to do its job properly.
Same thing, it's an 18 and we're holding the bolt portion with an 8.
Another thing we're gonna take off is gonna be the steering outer tie rod. There's a ball joint there. We gotta make sure we take it off. This way it gives us a lot more range of motion once we've taken off the strut. We're gonna keep taking off the ABS line.
Now we're taking off the ABS sensor connector.
We're gonna loosen up a 10mm that's holding the brake line. Use a hammer, try to get all the ball joints out.
This is out.
Now we have to disconnect the CV joint from the wheel hub assembly. Take off the cap. It's a 12mm nut that holds it together. Take off the nut. This gives us a lot more room, as you notice. Then we're going to loosen up the upper control arm. It's going to be 18 on one side and 21 on the other. We loosen it up, then we can get it out of the way to make our access a lot easier. These bolts definitely get pretty tight. Get the control arm out of the way.
Okay.
Now the 3 upper bolts, they come off. They're 18 as well. They hold the whole assembly together from the top. Now before, we also took off the 2 18s from the bottom.
Yeah.
We push down and we slip out the whole assembly.
Boom.
We're gonna put a bit of Loctite on the bolts, install the spacer on top, and tighten with the provided nuts. Reinstall the bottom 2. Apply pressure with a breaker bar on the bottom, and use a strong partner to push the upper part in position.
Good.
Once in position, the upper 3 bolts are going to line up with the holes.
Good. Ah, yes. Whew.
Might need a little bit of persuading with a hammer. And reinstall all the things we just took off. I'm gonna start off with the CV axle. Then we got the outer tie rod. After that, stabilizer link. And the upper ball joint. We start reconnecting all the wiring, and the wheel goes right back on. Notice we did not tighten the upper control arms. What we're going to do, we'll lower the vehicle, move around a little bit to get in the right height, and then we tighten it with the vehicle on the ground. You all done, guys?